My family, like, I was kind of like the kid that was ignored a lot. That I was the kid that, oh, well, Gina's always doing just fine, and Gina's fine. Like, I didn't hear I love you a lot. So whenever the big things would happen, it was pretty much like, oh, that's what you're supposed to do. I felt so overwhelmed that I just started bawling in therapy because it's just a lot.
We've been doing this for 2 or 3 years, and it feels like the same loops, and I cannot live my life with a lifelong partner that's running the same loops over and over and over. You have to heal, or we have to separate, because it's not good for me anymore. I feel like today's topic is the one I don't know. I feel like intimidated by it.
Really?
I don't think I haven't felt intimidated yet, because I've read a ton about it. And then this is one thing that it's like a treasure chest. When you creak it open, this is one thing that I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a ton of stuff in there. And it's like layers and layers and like people's opinions and researchers that have dedicated their life to it. And I'm like, but it's actually simple.
I feel like, I know my attachment style, and you can pretty much figure out your kid's attachment style if you really sit there and like really like analyze your kid. You can figure it out.
Technically, thinking about how they respond when you go away and then come back, that's like most studies looking at attachment, that's what they're evaluating, is like the response to the primary caregiver when the caregiver has left and then they return. How quickly are they distressed? Can they be comforted? Do they ignore them? Are they excited to see them? That's like the primary indicator of attachment. So you could just like observe your own child, I guess.
Oh, Penguin, I know now, is avoidant.
Yeah. So if he just like shuns you or gets angry or refuses to be with you, even if he's missed you, like all of that is an attachment style. And then if they're like eager and happy, if they cry a little bit when you first leave, but they're easily soothed, and then they're excited to see you again, that's secure attachment. And then I don't know the other one. What are the attachment styles? Anxious, avoidant, secure. And then there's like disorganized, and like some of these other ones that are a little more complicated that have to do with like abuse or I said mine was that, and it's not that.
What is it? Yours is probably insecure.
I think insecure, where it's like I'm the majority of the time getting my needs met really, really well. And then I'm never quite sure when things will be scarce or when I'll be responded to in a way that is like scary or hurtful to me. Not physically, but like emotionally. If I'm feeling insecure, I don't think I was ever sure when that would come. And maybe that was the product of being a part of a really big family. It's just impossible as a caregiver to like give your child perfect attunement all the time. Which is, I think, important to note here on the front end of an attachment episode is if you identify in yourself or towards your kids, like I'm not thrilled with the type of attachment that I'm realizing my child has to me. Like there may be big feelings or it's like complicated emotions that can come with that, and deep pain that comes from realizing your own attachment style to your parents that formed in early childhood and how that continues to play out throughout your life. That can be a painful process because it's like, oh, I had no control, and now I have a hard time in my romantic relationships, or I have a hard time with friendships, or whatever it is. You see it playing out, and the more you learn, it's like, oh.
But one thing that I have learned is that your attachment style is not like set in
fixed.
stone.
Yeah.
So if you're hearing this and you're like, okay, I recognize my own attachment style, doesn't mean that it's stuck there forever.
Yeah.
With some work, especially if you had a more typical upbringing, right? Where you said, you just grew up in a family that was a large family.
Safe, and so happy, healthy, but...
Right, yeah. But, and not to say it was perfect, but, it was a very typical household.
Yeah.
That with some work, you could learn how to change that. I would say maybe it would be harder for people who had to deal with trauma, abuse, or anything else in that same kind of way. It may be harder for them, but not impossible either.
No, yeah, I agree. Because we're neuroplastic beings. So because we all have brains that are always hardwiring for protection, if you can work on rewiring your brain to understand what protection is and what healthy self-resilience and self-protection looks like, your brain can learn a new pattern of connection, or it can reroute or rewire. Which is miraculous. That's really cool. And it takes work.
Hard.
It takes a lot of work because it's not a cognitive process, especially with trauma. Because for trauma, you're having a biological cascading process based on whatever the circumstance was. It's not just like, oh, I think this is trauma. Your body recognizes it as trauma. Your nervous system responds a certain way.
Sometimes your body doesn't even recognize
it
as trauma.
Flight is all those things are happening consciously or unconsciously. And so I think that's why there's a lot of somatic healing and a lot of EMDR and all these different physical processes that work on supporting rebuilding what does safety look like? How do I feel safe in my own body? How do I recognize a threat? How do I rewire the triggers of my fight flight response? Is a lot of body work in addition to just like talk therapy or reading a book about something and cognitively understanding it. There's like these body, get in your feels.
Yeah. And sometimes too, even though, I mean, I think about sometimes analyzing your own self, you really can never do that in a non-biased way.
Yeah.
Right? So I think about Drue reading a whole bunch of self-help books, and it wasn't until we really were going to therapy consistently that he started seeing big change. Not to say that he didn't want the change before. I think he desperately wanted it. I wanted it. We wanted change to kind of change our attachment styles. But it's not until we see someone who's like on the outside looking into our little
totally
world
agree
that we can really make big changes. Which is why I would always say, like, if you're noticing or like realizing like I really despise my attachment style, I really want to change it, I'm not happy with it, it's causing
I'm
issues,
self-sabotaging.
yes,
Yeah,
I definitely feel like you could read a lot of self-help books, and I think you should, but I think getting help, seeing someone, EMDR is probably one of my favorites because I've seen such big changes personally, that I think getting help would be probably the first thing I would say. Like, go get someone to help you. Maybe even jumpstart. I know it's expensive. I think that's like usually...
It's always barriers to access.
Yeah.
But there's also people, like, I've had a lot of healing with attachment style from the people in my life that I learned to trust. So like my long-term romantic partner has helped me heal my attachment style because like they're a secure, safe person and we've built safety. And then all my dysregulation comes up and it's a much safer place for me to acknowledge it, to have Blake call me out on stuff and like having that person. And that can be a friend that you find, that can be, you know, whomever in your life, someone that you really trust or can give you insights, like what you're saying. Sometimes you can't see it about yourself, but having someone there who's like, hey, you have this consistent pattern of like when you're about to be successful or really, really happy, you self-sabotage. Or when there's all these attachment flares.
Whenever things are going great for me, I ignore it.
Yeah.
And I'll like see it and like I won't acknowledge like something great has happened. And then I don't celebrate or anything. I just keep going. I keep pushing.
And what's that rooted in for you? Like, so as you've explored attachment, what type of attachment style are you? And then like, why do you think that that's one of your attachment flares?
Mostly just because in my family, like I was kind of like the kid that was ignored a lot. That I was the kid that, oh, well, Jeena's always doing just fine. And Jeena's fine. Like I didn't hear I love you a lot. So whenever the big things would happen, it was pretty much like, oh, that's what you're supposed to do. Like you got an A. Yeah, you're supposed to get
Obviously.
Obviously, like you can't do anything less than that. And so then I realized like, okay, there's no point in celebrating any of that because that's what I'm supposed to do.
It's assumed.
I achieved it. Okay, let's keep going, which I see that a lot in my own life where like birthdays, I don't like celebrating my birthday. Whatever. I get so many messages from like friends and family, mostly friends. My family doesn't really like call me on my birthday, and like it's so hard for me because I'm just like I don't remember how old I am, mostly because I'm not thinking about my birthday. I've had times where my birthday has come up the day of, and then someone like my husband will always tell me happy birthday, right? And he'll plan something small because he's recognized I don't like anything big, and it's not until he says happy birthday, baby, like as soon as I wake up because he's so excited to say something, I'm like, it's my birthday. Oh, okay. Well, like, let's just treat it any other day. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, okay, I made it another year. Like, other people have done the same too. So I know that's where it's rooted from. It's like from childhood trauma of like, we didn't have a lot of birthday parties. I can vividly only remember one birthday party. And I say vividly, I can remember like the dresses I was wearing. I can remember like certain like food around. And I'm like, remember now like those orange cheese puffs. It sounds so weird. And that's the only birthday that I ever remember. And I'm pretty sure that's because that's probably one of the few birthdays that we had celebrating my birthday. That's it. That's all in one. And I don't even know, isn't this sad? I don't even know if it's technically my birthday. It could have been my sister's birthday.
That you were just like dressed up for.
We were just dressed up for. It was a birthday. But it may not have even been my birthday. So there's a possibility that I don't think I've ever had a birthday party.
A big to-do or like, Jeena, we love you. It's your birthday. Yeah. And so now do you feel like it's fear of disappointment? Or like where is the attachment draw to like, I still now as an adult don't want to be acknowledged. Is it deep down? Have you done any processing of what that Why wouldn't you like now super embrace birthdays? What still causes that avoidance?
I'm an avoidant. I have an avoidant attachment style. So like when things are not going in the way that I want, or even if things are going exactly the way I want, I like to detach myself emotionally. And so that's just how I've done it. I haven't really delved into, because I think it just depends. Like it's the same reason why two people can grow up in the same home and have horrible things happen, and one person takes that and is able to be successful, and one person will take that and be like, this is why I am, and destroys their lives. So for me, I don't think there's I haven't delved into too much about it, but I don't think there's really a particular reason why I've chosen to be avoidant. Because I know there are some people who had the same kind of upbringing or had the same things that happened to, like I happened to me, that happened to them, and then they choose to have a birthday month where they go hard the whole month. But I think for me, there's maybe not a reason why I chose one or the other. I think it just depends on who you are and like your personality, but other things. And I think for me, it was just like, no, I can say maybe as I'm talking about this, I bet you it's also other things that kind of like other events or other instances, not just surrounding about birthdays, also pushed me to be more avoidant. And so then all together, I'm just an avoidant person. So like friendships that I've had where friends have like really broken trust. And then I've had to say, you know what, it is what it is. And just like kind of ignore and forget about them. Then I've done that with my birthday. I've done that with friendships. And I've done it with so many things that I think that's how I became an avoidant attachment person.
This is easier. If I just cut myself off emotionally, I don't actually deal with the pain of navigating why this happened or how to heal it. I'd rather just like, oop, that hurt me. That crossed a line. We're done. Like terminate. Okay. Having known you for a long time, I'm super curious because you're not, from my perspective as your friend, avoidant like to conflict. And it feels almost like the term like avoidant attachment style would be anytime something isn't working for you or anytime it's not going the way you thought, you just like kind of run from it or avoid, and you don't do that.
Emotionally, I'm not. So like, you've noticed like I'm not avoidant of like having a confrontation with people, right?
Not at all.
But also because I'm not emotionally attached, I can fight with someone and fight really hard, but it's not going tomorrow. Like, unless I'm in jail, which, you know, whatevs. Unless I'm in jail, I was going to say, it happened before. I won't bother me the next day.
Yeah. So you're detached. You can just talk like cognitively about whatever the topic is at hand. It's not about like your life or your emotions or your needs. So do you feel that then in your intimate relationships with friends or whomever, if it is about you and your needs and is it a much more like you'd rather the avoidant route?
Oh, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like even right now I'm feeling very uncomfortable. I'm like, okay, let's like talk about
let's move
Courtney.
on. Yeah.
Let's talk about you. That'll be so much easier. I mean, Drue is, I would say maybe insecure, where it's like, as soon as I start pulling away, he's like, I like need you even more. When we have fights, like I'm already over the fight. When like we hash it out.
And he's trying to like, are we good? Are we good? Yeah.
Yes. And he's like, can I get a hug? Or he's like, do you need a hug? And I despise when he does that because in reality, I know he needs a hug. And I'm like, just say you need a hug. I will give you a hug, but don't ask me if I need a hug because the answer is going to be no.
Right.
Because I'm fine. Like I'm not fine, but like
that's not what helps you.
Yes. It's not what helps me. That's not what I need right now. But if you need it because I love him and he's one of the few people that have gotten to the point where it's like, I know that I need to push through this issue that I have, that I'm willing to not push him completely away, but enough away that it has caused some insecureness in him. But it wasn't like our relationship has caused insecure like attachment for him. It was a lot more things that stem from childhood, but like me having like, and it's weird, I've noticed that people who are insecure and one who is avoidant, they typically find each other very often. But for Drue, it's really hard where we'll have a fight and then the very next day he's like, that was just so hard. Or weeks later he's like, we had a fight, and I'm like, oh, I was over it the very next day. Like, it's like, whatever. Like, we've talked about it.
Probably he was thinking I felt really far from you, and that triggered feelings of like, I don't know if or when I'll feel close again because I have this insecure attachment of like come and go, or it's not reliable. And so that's his like deep trigger. I feel like I read something. I don't feel like I read it. I read it. I just don't know who it was from. Okay. It was something, I wish I knew. Someone watching this will know about like the reason that those people find each other is because if you're creating the thing that's like most consistently familiar to you, you have this false sense of control over the relationship, because it's like, I know I have maybe this avoidant pattern, but if I continue to play out this avoidant pattern that I saw like a caregiver give to me, I at least have done that before. And our brain always wants that familiarity and that security. So we self-sabotage in ways that until we can heal, it's just our brain doing the thing that it thinks is the safest route, because even the healthier option is still unknown. And the unknown is way freaky to our primal brain and to ourselves. Is like, I know cognitively that it would be healthier if I had XYZ relationship patterns, or if I handled conflict in XYZ way. But to make that leap from like, this is just what I've always done, and this is what like my caregivers always did to me, is at least familiar territory. I found a lot of insight from that, because I was like, oh, it normalizes things. And like in social work, normalization is a really important tool to help you understand yourself, to where you're not like, I'm broken, it's over, I'm the only person that does this, I'm never going to do anything right. All of those narratives, when you normalize something and can give like, here's why cognitively, here's why attachment wise, here's all these different frameworks that help you box and understand and unpack why you behave the way you do, and other people are doing it too. Everyone else is doing this. This is a healthy coping mechanism.
When we're in the deeps, like down in the dumps, and we're like, it's really hard, or life sucks.
It's not just you.
It's not just you. And like our brain wants to tell us it's just us. Like, it's only you. It only ever happens to you. This is just you. This is just your problem. In reality, there are a lot of people who've been where you are at. But it's our brain who's, I don't know, just wanting us to make us feel more lonely, or more like, oh.
I don't know. We need a psychologist up in here if we're going to like dive into this, because I would be curious to know what part of your brain is giving you that narrative. But I mean, there's only a few attachment styles. So, and different researchers have different versions and names, but like loosely speaking, we've touched on the main ones. And if there's billions of people in the world and only a handful of attachment styles, you have good company. That means a lot of people are experiencing and processing their relationships, their pain, their conflict, their parent relationships, how they're parenting their children, probably kind of similar to you. And you can find whole podcasts and books and influencers and research psychologists and documentaries trying to understand each of the attachment styles. And I'm like, there's support and resources out there if you are feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm always picking partners that hurt me in the same ways. And I know that it hurts me. Why do I have these cycles that I'm going through? I feel like attachment can shine kind of a light on that, to where you can then, because for me personally, the reason I first understood what my attachment was when my partner, Blake, we've been together for almost 10 years, married 8.5. When we had a point in our relationship where Blake was like, hey, the dynamics that we have together of like, you do XYZ, I do XYZ, here's this like little cute game, this little dance we do together. Blake was like, I want out of this dance. Like this dynamic is no longer going to work for me. And so if we can't make significant changes, I'm out. And that was so jarring to me that it not forced me. I chose. I mean, nothing forces you, but it was a wake up call. It was a jarring enough experience that Blake was like, I'm legitimately going to leave. Like, I really care about you and I really care about me enough to not want to play these same loops that feel unhealthy to me.
It's so hard because you're insecure and you're like, you're leaving.
It was my biggest trigger. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me, was having someone that I love and I know loves me. And that's what I think was the basis of it. I would have, I think, responded much more poorly if I didn't know deep down Blake was saying something that was true and that Blake wasn't doing it out of love. And that's hard. That's messy and complicated, but it's my experience. So I'll try and shed light on it. But that's when I first was like, why do I feel stuck? It's like, I even in the moment can know that I'm engaging in a behavior that is not desirable or that is actively hurting myself and my partner. And I feel like I can't stop. I'm like, I'm saying this thing that I always say that I know is inflammatory, that you've told me hurts your feelings, and I can't stop. And that was the first like 2 or 3 years of our relationship. And because I am, what am I?
Insecure.
Yes. I had seen that modeled.
I feel bad. Everyone's gonna be like, you just called her insecure.
Insecure. I'm insecure. No, and now I don't even identify with that, which we kind of, before we started recording, touched on that. Like you said, these can evolve and change. And like, so really my primary response was insecure before I did all of the work that was catapulted by Blake saying like, I'm out. Like I cannot, we've been doing this for 2 or 3 years and it feels like the same loops, and I cannot live my life with a lifelong partner that's running the same loops over and over and over. You have to heal or we have to separate because it's not good for me anymore. That was the greatest act of love Blake ever gave me and simultaneously, I'm proud of how I chose to respond to it because it was, my deepest fear. My biggest thing was like, someone's not going to be here for me. Like, not really I'm unlovable. I wouldn't say that's like a core, but definitely like I'll be alone was a big one. And so for Blake to say that, it forced me to confront the fact that my own behaviors were the things that were going to eventually drive me to be alone. And I was like, I've got to heal this stuff and look at why I have these loops that I run through. Yeah. And it was the best, hardest, most painful journey that was so revelatory, Blake aside. Like, honestly, this type of attachment work and thinking about how you were parented and thinking about how you're passing those things on to children or other relationships is self-work. Someone can shine a light on it, like what you were saying. Someone that cares about you can say, I'm observing this pattern, or I kind of see that you do XYZ often, but like once the info's there, no one's fixing me from the outside in. Yeah. And that's like the best and worst of it. The best is that I had some degree of control over healing. And the worst is that it was up to me. And if I didn't figure it out, I felt it's like overwhelming to try and heal something like attachment.
Well, that's why
why do I do what I do? Who knows? How do I fix it?
You have to think about it. There are a lot of people who understand their attachment style that never change it, even when they know it's not helping them. Because it's such hard work.
It's overwhelming.
It's a lot of like emotional labor. Like I think about the work that Drue and I have had to put to work on a relationship, knowing that our attachment styles were like really harming us in some ways, that it's just so much work. I mean, there were times that we would like leave therapy and I was just like, ugh, like I think I remember just crying in therapy. I was just like, I'm just sad just because this is so much work. Like, I feel like it's not going to get better. Or I just feel like I just feel overwhelmed by how much work it's going to take.
It's like an uphill battle.
That we were already been in therapy for a long period of time, like putting a lot of money towards it. And I'm just like, there's a possibility that we might not even see anything for a couple more years. Like, because it's like we've like been dealing with this for so long, right? Since as a child, and things have been continually reinforcing why you should be the way you are and why you should have the attachment that you should have. And then all of a sudden you're in a marriage and then something or someone maybe telling you this is not working, you need to change so that way you guys can heal. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I know this, but it just feels so much work. Like, how do I do it? And it's like work where I know like I still have to work on like my relationship with my kids, work on my relationship with myself.
Yeah.
Then I'm having to like do all this work. I'm just like, I felt so overwhelmed that I just started bawling in therapy because it's just a lot.
It is a lot.
It's so much.
It is a lot. And you're doing like backwards work. It's generational healing. I think that is the most optimistic. From like a mystical standpoint, there's this idea of 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. And for me, that feels like something I can hold on to is I'm trying to heal people that didn't have the knowledge, the tools, the resources, the time, the capacity to take care of themselves. And that's how I've gotten where I am, is like these little isms, these little like quirks that are painful, that if someone hasn't smoothed them out of their relationship style or their attachment style, then you then reparent your child that way and on and on. And so if I'm doing some breakthrough work on being there for myself, on showing up consistently and being vulnerable, even when it's embarrassing or shame-filled or scary, doing it anyways, that healing work feels like liberation for the people before me that didn't have the resources to do so, even if it's hard and messy. And it feels like liberation because I am not passing those same exact pain points, my own unique ones, sure, but not those same ones on, if I can acknowledge them and like work through them. I feel like that kept me going in the moments of my life is falling apart. I don't know what's going to happen to me or to this person that I really love and that really loves me. It was like, sometimes it takes the unraveling for the healing to happen. And that moment of unraveling, It's an experience like inherently like with privilege to have it, because if you don't have the headspace to sit and feel deep pain, if you don't have the headspace, like you just keep going. You don't have the breakdown because there's something deep inside you that says like, if you cry right now, like you must keep going because there's no headspace or time to cry, like just keep trucking. And so like, I just feel, really grateful that I was young enough and had enough in that phase of my life time to say, okay, well, like, what am I going to do about it? So Blake or no Blake, this is a me thing. And I think I'll keep having this behavior because I know how much I love my partner. So if with the person that I love more than anyone in the world I'm doing these behaviors with, I'm going to kind of be stuck with these behaviors. So I'm never going to find a magical new partner where I like don't have these same triggers or I don't have these same patterns that I'm embarrassed about. They're all going to flare back up again. So there's no running from attachment wounds that need healed. And so that was helpful because then it didn't feel like, oh, Blake's doing this to me. Blake's abandoning me. I was like, no, Blake just said something that's true and was brave enough to love me enough to do it. And now I get to decide like where I go from here or what I do with that info.
Well, as you're talking, it's making me also realize that it's going to sound super weird, but I have to fully explain. I chose Drue because of his insecure attachment. And it sounds weird, but I'll explain. Because I'm so avoidant, I was really afraid, and I'm still afraid, that I would be avoidant with my kids, that I really wanted to have my kids to have a parent that would like truly just like be there for them and like always like, because I know like I still think that I still feel like I may do what my parents did to me. I'm working really hard not to do that. I'm very like affectionate towards my kids, at like verbally and physically. I love giving them hugs and like more than my parents ever did with me. But I was so fearful of it that I chose someone like Drue. And it wasn't like I particularly chose Drue, but I knew that I needed to find someone
to fill those gaps.
Yeah, fill in the gaps that I felt like I wouldn't be able to do. And because I thought that maybe I wouldn't be able to do the work myself. And I picked Drue because I needed someone who would just like totally love bomb. I know that's really bad, but like my kids or our kids in a way that like I felt like my kids could grow up and like, oh, at least I had a parent that was able to do that. Because I think it's just so important for our kids to have a very secure attachment with a parent. And I may be wrong for doing it the way I did, but I definitely feel like I did pick the right partner, because even though that I'm avoidant, it does really feel good knowing how much Drue wants to be with me. And like, and when he'll say like, he will ask me like, hey, do you need a hug? I know now that he's asking me, I need a hug, right? And I'll give him one, but it does feel good like when I'm really able to like sit back and think about it. And he's like, I need you. I want to be around you. Even when something like this just happened, I still want to be around you. That it does feel really good. And I feel like kids can pick up on that, where it's like, even if Drue may be like frustrated with the kids, which doesn't happen often, that the kids will know, but like, Dad still loves me.
He's like never going anywhere.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere. Dad will still be there, and like kind of thing. And I really wanted my kids to have that because I don't feel like I had that. And so then I picked someone who, and it's weird, like I picked someone with an insecure attachment, so that because I knew there was a high possibility of me being an avoidant parent, that I didn't want my kids to have two parents that were avoidant or two parents who were like nonchalant.
I think that's incredible. I don't know. That feels like a very intuitive process that probably a lot of us are doing without realizing. And within your relationship, your partner that has an attachment style that's different than you, when they rub up against each other, is like the greatest indicator for, it can either trigger like, I guess we're not meant to be together, or it can trigger, oh, thank you for all that you do that isn't my strength, and thank you for like I can appreciate all that I do that isn't yours, and how are we going to collaborate to be catalyst of healing for each other and like within our relationship, so that trickles down in how we parent our kids. And I don't feel like watching you around your kids and knowing who you are, I just feel that even if in your adult relationships your attachment style manifests, I feel you have incredible attention and intention both in how you engage with your children, it feels very, very thoughtful and very intentional for the warmth, the consistency, the attunement to their needs. Like, I feel like you'll put the whole world on pause to just say, like, I see you and nothing matters to me right now more than how you're feeling and what you need. And I think that maybe is rooted in like some pain that you've had that wasn't ever given to you. I think it's a strength of yours now that you've practiced with your kids, that even if it's being flushed out in other areas and it's like still in counseling, who knows, right? We all have those idiosyncrasies across our relationships. But for me, it feels like you've realized this is a pain point for me. I'm going to not only partner with someone that I think can offer it to my kids, but like I'm going to be really intentional in how I offer secure attachment to them as best I can, right? And then they'll tell you with time if it worked for them or not. And, you know, that's the way families work. That's just we're all doing the best we can. But I think that's a strength of yours, which is incredible. And what you were saying, like, this is very, very hard. It can be very, very hard, and you can still have breakthroughs and moments of success where you're like, and I think I'm kind of nailing that. I took my attachment that was painful to me. I thought about how I didn't want to do the same for my kids, and I've like really tried to be thoughtful about it. I have friends that have taken whole parenting courses because they don't like their attachment style. And and they have kids that they started to realize they were doing the same patterns as their parents did. So they've tried to revamp. They've done like incredible work to try and intentionally set up new systems with their kids to create healthier attachment. Yeah, it's inspiring. It's really beautiful. Even if your child's 14 and you realize their whole life you feel like you missed it or you messed it up already. It's just more adaptable than that. And repair is always possible with attachment towards self and towards your kids. Yeah.
You know, it's funny because I think about like each of my kids, and they all have different attachment styles. Maybe one or two of them may have the same attachment style. But as I'm thinking about it, I'm pretty sure they don't. I think each of them have had different, but also they have like, aside from Tiger, she has 2 moms, 2 dads, and so she has been brought up in 2 different households. I would say, they were pretty much brought up the same way, but they all have different attachment styles, which blows my mind because, especially I would say for sure for Panda and Badger, they grew up they're like only 12, 13 months apart. You would think that they have the same attachment.
Because you're basically parenting them in very similar developmental stages simultaneously.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's why and they have different attachment styles. Then Tiger came into our family around the age of 2, right before she turned 3. And hers obviously is so different. But like I think about how like her and Badger are about the same age. And so she's been in our home for a considerable amount of time, right? So you think that like it would
level out.
Love, you can't love it out. Like I really, really wish we could, but like no. And so she still has a lot of work to do, and we'll have a lot of work to do as she gets older to heal from like a lot of stuff. And so I always find it fascinating where I think, and I look at my family, maybe my family may not be like the perfect example, but I think of like other families who have a lot of children very close in age and they're parenting around the same, like you said, developmental stages and milestones around the same time, that their kids can have very different attachment styles. And so I think, yes, your parents play a huge role, but I also think it's like something that it's the kid, right? I feel it's not just like your parents who solely just like influence you. It's the person themselves and their friendships with other people outside of the home.
Yeah. And their needs. It's like lack of attachment being met is like a lack of proper attunement. And I just like, if someone walks away from this episode with one thing, I really, really want to emphasize the importance of attunement, because it's not something that you're memorizing or trying to like put a label on your child by saying like, my child is this type of attachment, or I was attached this way to my parents, and now, you know, that's just the way it is. Attunement is this really fluid, ever evolving process, right? Of like mirroring and watching the child's behavior always. And every week, year, 10 years, that child's going to have different needs, different preferences, different like their core personality is there. I mean, I know you can speak to that, but really like they're unfolding into themselves always. And so what it looks like to be an attuned parent is going to look different in every stage for every child, which is a ton of balls to juggle. Like to have 5 children at all different stages that are also on their own individual journey every year. It's like so many spans of trying to gauge how can I help this child feel seen, loved, supported in this moment? It just takes a lot of bandwidth and intentionality, but also I think it takes a lot of, like that's an optimistic thought for me when I think of working with kids, because if a previous thing you were doing, unless you're rigid, the only real downside to attachment is I guess I am who I am and my child is who they are. And if we're not matched, it's over for us. We're doomed. Which that mindset feels the only real detriment is like the rigidity. If you have any sort of fluidity towards yourself, forgiveness, like, okay, I'm going to do the best I can. Yesterday wasn't great. I'm going to repair and I'm going to try better today. You know, I'm going to like talk to my kid, apologize, let them know, hey, that was like an off day for me, or I didn't feel very attuned, or I didn't feel that our connection was strong yesterday. How did you feel about it? And having those repair conversations, and then just like, I'm talking to professionals, talking to friends, getting more insight, talking with your partner if you have one. Where do you think our child is, and do you think their needs are being met for what their attachment style is this moment of their life? It's a little exhausting, but also like inspiring that it's this ever evolving.
I mean, this might be me, but like I truly don't know if I would say like exhausting is like the word, mostly because I've noticed that like I can tell my kids' attachment style, right? But that's also because I've begun to foster relationships with each of them individually, so that I'm just like building a relationship like mother child, right? I also recognize like them as like a person, a human being. That relationship you start to like build, you start to recognize it becomes almost natural. I think that's what I'm trying to say. It like becomes natural that I know how she needs, what she needs is very different from what Badger will need. Or how Panda will need something, that I'll very easily be able to notice something, see something, and then be able to act on it to helping them feel that relationship, that closeness that they need, but like aren't able to like maybe verbalize,
communicate.
Like, communicate like they need it in a certain way. So I don't know if it's like, maybe exhausting is the right word, but I also
I think you're right. I agree with you.
I realize because I've built relationships with them that it has become almost like second nature. Like I
agree with you.
Yesterday, I'm not proud of this. Like I don't think I even yelled, but because, well, actually I know I didn't yell, but Cal was like drinking something and she spit it back into the cup. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, and she knows like I'm not a person who like I don't like yelling, because I remember even a couple years ago I told them like, I'm over yelling. I know if I yell, you guys will like listen to me, but like that's not really listening. That's like obeying, and I really don't like that. And I can, like, I know as a parent I can get you to do what I want, but like that's not also teaching you how to understand and make decisions for yourself, how to respect someone else, and respecting someone because I respected you. And so I wasn't even that loud, but like because it was just like my tone of voice, like she was like completely sad, and I'm like, oh, like in my mind I'm like, that's not the worst thing, but I just saw it and I was like, oh my goodness, like why did she do that? And that was the first time in a really, really long time that like I raised my voice, had
like a strong response,
just a strong response. And I remember having to sit down with her, and like I stopped everything we were doing. I don't remember what we were doing, but like something was happening and I ignored everything. I was like, I'm so sorry. Like I shouldn't have yelled. There was no reason. Like honestly, really, there was no reason, because the worst comes to worst. Like you just like put it.
Who cares?
Like, you drank something, you didn't like it, and you say put it back in the cup. And like it was kind of like not the best choice, but also you're a kid, and like stuff like that happens. But really, what I'm trying to tell you, because I remember telling her like, really, it doesn't even matter what happened. I'm really sorry. That was a really strong reaction. It did not deserve that strong reaction. I apologize so much. And I was like, can I give you a hug? Do you need a hug? And you can see her just like sit there and like think about it. And then I was like, you let me know. She's like, I do. And then we just sat there, and a whole bunch of stuff was happening around. I just sat there and gave her a hug, because I really, really felt bad.
Even if it just scared her.
Like, yeah, and it could have just scared her. I don't know what it was. I need to talk to her even more. but I just apologize. Like, this was my fault. I'm so sorry. That's not the response you should have gotten. Like, it's not even,
it wasn't equivalent. Yeah, my response wasn't equivalent to what was going on.
I know what she would have needed was me talking to her, apologizing, hugging her, and being there for her in that way.
And some people need space. And some people, and like, the more you know, this is what's fascinating to me about having been in so many kids' homes, working as a childcare worker or a full-time nanny or whatever I was doing. Being in a lot of different kids' homes, the more time you spend with them, if you care about it, it's not inherent. It's not a given that you just know how to read your child, or that you understand what that facial expression meant, or that this little behavior often leads to a big blowout in 5 minutes if you don't catch it here. Like, that takes attunement. So it's like an intentional, like, I care enough about the personalities and the needs of the little people that are around me that I'm watching for them to help me better understand how to meet their needs. That's my biggest goal as a childcare worker. The only thing I really want to know how to do is keep you safe. And then beyond that, try and meet your needs. What is fun for you? What is happy for you? What's connecting for you? What stretches you? What, whatever you can do. And I think like that's even in small babies, working with a lot of small children, people that don't spend time with babies, I think, are a little baffled by the tiniest little signals that primary caregivers pick up on. They know, like, that little extra high pitch tilt at the end of the cry, they're hungry. They're about to start wailing. And if I don't catch, and give them their bottle or nurse them in, this 1 minute window, it's going to lead to XYZ, because you've memorized, when my baby is self-soothing. They're not about to cry. They're self-soothing. That little hum they do as they go to sleep is totally fine. I don't have to go check on them, because you've learned that baby. And guess what? Your next baby that comes around, they can make that exact same hum, and they're about to be livid. Different. It's that baby. And so I think what you're saying is right. I don't think it's exhausting. Whenever I've engaged with kids, because kids are cool and I like them and I'm curious about them, and I love them, I genuinely love them, I want what's best for them, then it doesn't feel like work or labor to try and continually understand their needs.
Then you know what else? Reason why it feels like less work? Because as adults, we will purposely hide things. Kids are just so open.
Yeah.
Where if they're feeling a certain way, it's really hard for them to hide that. And so when you're noticing something about them, it may be hard for them to verbalize, but you can see their emotion on their face and you understand what's happening. With adults are way more
guarded.
It feels more work with adults, because there's
it's like you're playing a game with an adult. They have layers, and they aren't saying what they really mean, because they've learned what's polite, what's acceptable, what's likable, it's all this stuff. And we've talked about this in previous episodes. It's all this stuff that you get put on to children as they get older is usually internalized messages of, am I safe to just be me? Am I safe to have needs? We talked about this in the child autonomy episode. Am I safe to be who I am? And if I'm not, then I learn more and more and more behaviors to be lovable, enough, palatable, to be seen, to be, whatever. You've modified and contorted yourself to be enough for your caregiver.
Yeah.
To have your needs met, to be safe. Attachment is formed in early childhood, but from 3, infancy, right? Yes. Yeah. Primary attachment is up until 3-ish. And it's originated with it, upon, not conception's too early, but as soon as you're born. That's where this whole debate about sleep training, and it's rooted from many people in a discussion in attachment. So is meeting your child's need when they're distressed, what type of attachment is that causing later in their life? If they can know that someone's going to show up for me and be there, if I'm hungry, if I'm sad, if I'm scared, if a pin's sticking in me, whatever, someone will be there and try and alleviate that for me, builds secure attachment. Or I just stop crying or don't have these needs because no one comes. And then I just I move on past that and learn how to meet my own needs. I'm a small little tiny adult that is avoidant, because if I rely on other people, they let me down. If I rely on other people, I'll just be more sad. It's worse to expect something and have it not happen than to just stop expecting it. And babies learn that in infancy. So if you've been having that experience since infancy, then it's even more challenging and just takes additional tools of support to heal and work through all of the ways, the deeply held belief that I'm worthy of someone's love, that if I need something, people show up for me and people are there in my life because I'm worth that. That's some really big core identity messaging. And that's, I think, from my understanding, which is loose from what I've tried to understand from child development, human development, relationships, parenting psychology, that feels like the core to me of attachment. From a caregiver to a child is attunement. And then from a child to themselves and others is like, what are my needs? Are they being met? Who am I? How do I believe about myself based on if my needs were met or not? And then working through those things together. Do you have like resources that come to mind that you've used in the past to understand your own? Or like when you think of attachment, where would someone go if they were listening to this episode and then they were like, okay, cool. So like now I kind of know that I have attachment questions or like am concerned.
I don't know if I have any particular one that like jumps to my mind right now. I mean, because I think about even the choices that we made as parents. You said something about like how like sleep training, right?
Yeah.
We decided very early on that we don't like sleep training because we tried sleep training with Panda at 6, maybe around 8 months, and it was horrible. And we realized like it could cause issues with attachment. And I don't remember what we read then. And so I think there's so many resources online
and opinions
that I'm sure like I wish I knew something that like I was like, oh, I read this and this really helped. I do know that the attachment styles or your attachment style has greatly influenced how we parent, so much that we didn't even do the cry it out method because I did not want my kid to think that I was not going to be there for them.
Yeah.
Like this idea of I cry and mommy haul ass to come get me and help me and pick me up or feed me or comfort me. Like that was so important for me that like we didn't even do it cry it out. And it sucks because like we're stuck with a toddler in our room for like a year and a half where we just kicked out Panda out of our room. He's 2.
No, you kicked out.
Not Panda. Penguin. I kicked out Penguin out of
Finally,
our room.
Panda. 11 years old.
No, Penguin. We kicked out Panda was kicked out of our room. 1.5 years old? Yeah, 1.5. Badger, 2. She was 2. Everyone's at least been with 2 except for Panda. He was our poor guinea pig. I feel so bad for him. I don't know.
It's always the first child.
I'm so sorry, but
I was
the first child too, Panda.
Taking the hits.
I was a guinea pig too, but he was a year and a half, and then Penguin, we just kicked him out, and it's been nice because now that he screams, he knows that we'll come running. He knows. He barely even gets out of his bed anymore. Dad, where are you, Dad? Dad, where's Dad? And I'll walk in there, not you, Mom, Dad. And he'll start bawling again. As soon as Dad like comes in, he'll stop everything. Like, okay, cool.
I'm fine.
I need you in my bed now. Do overly attached parents produce anxious children? Okay, I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but I can't help notice that parents who are really trying hard to have secure attachment with their children are the ones with clingy, anxious kids. Is this caused by the parenting style, or do they resort to this parenting style because they already have anxious children? I know that programs such as Circle of Security would say that a secure and attached child is more confident and less anxious, but it does seem to be my observation. Maybe that's just me though.
Okay, I have big thoughts on this.
I don't know if I would say like having a very secure attachment will definitely lead to confident children. Like
that your child still has a personality.
Yes.
But I think this person's referring to like children that are clingy or anxious. So confident in that way. Not like outgoing confident, but confident like I like me and I'm good, I'm safe. That type of confidence maybe. And they're saying their observation is, from my understanding, is it seems to me people that are trying to be so securely attached are creating more anxious children.
I don't know if I completely agree with that.
I have seen cases that I know where this person's coming from. So I've seen parents that are trying to be, they're so intentional and thoughtful about the type of parent they are, and they're trying to meet all of their children's needs. That last sentence I just said is where I feel things start to go awry. It's when you as a parent, all of your intention is like, my child will never be sad or hurt, or I'm just always going to be there for them. makes it get a little weird because it's so healthy for a child to feel deeply disappointed. It's so healthy for them to feel afraid and move through it anyways and realize secure attachment is not about your child never being sad or afraid. Yeah. Secure attachment is you consistently showing up even though your child's having natural emotions. And so for me, the parents that have these types of results are the parents that want to just like always be there for their kid, and their kid is never upset, and I won't leave you anywhere, and if you don't want a babysitter, you don't have to have one. Mommy's never going to leave you. Mommy's, that type of parenting leads to a child that doesn't ever learn, I'm actually okay by myself. And even if I have a big feeling, and even if this is hard for me, my mom and my parents always come back for me. Yeah. And they love me. And when I need them, they're there for me. And that's a different thing than never wanting your child to be uncomfortable. And so I think they're misinterpreting secure attachment as just like overprotective or...
So that would be anxious attachment,
right.
Technically.
That parent has an anxious attachment towards their own child. And you can't say what the child will have, but then, like, I think that's what it is. They're thinking that these parents are, like, providing secure attachment. I think the parent probably has their own attachment issues that they're projecting onto their child, and they think they're doing so well because they are so closely listening to what they need, and they're always there for them. And, like, that's not really even the best route either for a child's resilience and their own ability
to
differentiate in their own ability. Yeah, like... But then that's why I think it's a misinterpretation of the attachment style.
But then what would you say? It's something else, like something as simple as like people who breastfeed, baby wear, like all these things that we're supposed to be doing. Like even
does it make clingy kids?
Yeah, does it make clingy kids? Because I've breastfed. We don't do cry it out. I've baby worn my kids, and I don't know if maybe one thing of those things, like I don't know if it's just breastfeeding itself, baby wearing itself, choosing not to do cry it out, having a specific sleep training method that we have chosen for ourselves. I don't think any of those particularly can lead one, or I wouldn't say exactly one thing that we have done hinges on the fact that whether or not there would be a secure attachment person. And I don't even know. I feel so weird for saying this, but I don't know if it's even the combination of everything. Because I truly feel like, these children come, like, I do feel like we have an influence on them as parents. But I also...
Their own
personality. And I truly feel that because I look at my kids who are all brought up in the same home, and they all have different personalities.
Okay.
And so this idea of how... Yes, as parents, we greatly influence, and we're one of the first influences on them, we're one of the first people that really are their world for so long, that I do think that we have such a huge influence on their attachment, but I just feel like who they are as a core, or who they are as a person, right? Because I just think of like Badger, who I would say maybe has a secure attachment. I feel like she's in a secure attachment. I know she knows, like, if she would call me, she knows I would come running. But she's very, like, she does things on her own and usually pushes through on her own. And, like, I just feel like she has a secure attachment. But I feel like maybe that was, I don't know if I'm just the
if
person
that's her personality, or if
I don't feel like I could
you did anything different.
Just take credit for all that.
No. And okay, I have a question for you. Do you, as your kids age, do you deep down believe that your children are entirely capable beings? Like, they can do it. They really can. They have it in them to live their life.
Yes.
Okay. I think that is what it is. I genuinely do. Like, I think underneath parenting styles, how you engage, personalities of your kids, underneath it all, you're the type of parent that believes in your kids. And that is bled into everything you do. When they get a boo-boo, mommy believes in you. And and you can still be like, I'm right here to kiss it, or I'll let you snuggle as long as you need. Or, and maybe sometimes you say like, hey, you look all right, you got this. Like, you may respond differently based on time, based on resources, based on the child, whatever, circumstances. But underneath it all, I think you have a deeply held belief that like emanates into your children that like they're capable. And I think some parents don't.
They are capable. Like, I mean, even Tiger has a very, I would say, like, anxious attachment style. Very, very anxious, and maybe even a bit insecure.
She has, like, a disorganized. Yeah.
Oh, so maybe that's probably the right one. Yeah. And so there are times where on certain days, things you see her do every single day, she's able to kill it. And then there are some days it's just so much harder for her. And it doesn't bother me. I know that's who she is based on the things that she's had to deal with and from her past. But a lot of times I'm like, you know what? We can sit here and you're totally fine to cry. I'm like, please do. I don't want you to try to ball it up. I don't want you to try not to not have those feelings. But once you feel like you have gotten those feelings out and you feel like you're good,
let's move through it.
Let's
You've
do it.
got
Let's
this.
go for it. Let's go for it. I don't want you to ever feel like sitting here and crying is the only ever thing that you could ever do.
Like, let's move through it. What are our options?
Yes. And that's really big for me to tell them, because I know they can do it. Like, it's not even a question of whether or not they can do certain things. I know that they can.
But that's creating secure attachment for your children, because when you send them off to do something hard, their first day of school, whatever, right? Anything, staying in a class that they don't like, having a hard time making friends, whatever, you need to run errands and someone wanted to come with you and they can't. All of these bazillion scenarios that can happen with kids where they're going to be disappointed, sad, upset, or scared. And underneath those emotions for your child, it's like you're holding space to be bigger than that emotion that they're having right then. So you kind of guide them through it. You kind of help them see this is a feeling. It's not who you are that you're feeling lonely right now. You're feeling lonely. It's a little feeling you're having in the large landscape of who you are. And it feels to me that you as a parent are able to recognize that for your child. And then the way that you parent, even though it's different for everyone and they all have very different personalities, underneath it all is this belief that your child is enough and that they're capable. Many parents that I've encountered, through their interactions, their core message is, I have all the answers for you. And then it's so disorienting for that parent when they're like, oh my gosh, I don't have the answers, or I'm also scared in this moment, or I'm also nervous for my child making a new friend or having a babysitter they've never had before. All of that like anxiety of, I don't know if we're going to make it. And I definitely don't think you're going to make it because I am supposed to have all the answers for you. Yeah. It's very insecure. And so the child picks up on all of those little micro facial expressions, all of those little, and it instills in them a sense of like, I don't think we're okay. Like, I'm not going to be all right. And
which is hard because your kids
I need
are able
my
to
parent.
pick up.
They pick up on everything.
On such the ittiest littlest thing.
The same way that you're attuned to your kids are attuned to their caregivers for safety. So they're always, their little radars are like, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? So everything that they're doing is like, and that's what, the more securely attached a child is, the less hyper attuned they have to be.
True, yeah.
I think this person is making a very common observation of like, securely attached parents, when what they're really observing is parents attempting to be securely attached, which is really admirable, but like maybe having a hard time doing it effectively because they're afraid
or they don't really truly understand the difference.
They don't trust themselves. Their own, like, what if my kid falls off that log and cracks their head open and I'm not here to see it? I'm a bad mom. If that's your internal monologue, your kid's feeling that. Yeah. You know, and that's your like hypervigilance and like you're thinking you're offering them this secure attachment when I think really it could be like, I just don't want them to ever experience pain. And that's not truly, that's not truly like your higher self or like a more healed version of self thinking, because pain is where incredible growth happens. And boo-boos and owies are how children learn spatial awareness. Like it's really important for them developmentally. And if you don't ever want them to go through that and you're like beating yourself up if they ever do, your child's picking up all sorts of ideas and messages about the world, about themselves, about their relationship with you. And it's not really as secure as this person was. Yeah. The terms they were using, in my opinion.
Hearing these conversations will help them become better parents because they're going to be more self-aware.
I hope, yeah.
Because we're always trying to do better, but we cannot do better unless we're looking inward. And so like, it's like the idea of me recognizing I'm an avoidant person, right? And recognizing that I needed a certain type of person to marry so I would have a better, so that my kids could have the best. Because if I couldn't give it to them, I was going to choose a partner who would be able to give that to them. And also help heal me, because I definitely do feel love when Drue is like, I need you.
Needing you and wanting you.
Wanting you, because I didn't have that with my own parents or my own family members. And so it's like this idea of like hearing this and being just more open and more aware of so much stuff, but realizing, hey, this starts with me, because even if I'm able to figure out my kids' attachment styles, I need to figure out my own, deal with my own stuff, so that way I can become a better parent. That is all important. It's not just recognizing my kids' attachment styles and then helping them be helping them be secure. It's also recognizing that I need to fix myself first so that I can help someone else.
Yeah.
Or even like how I did it. I wasn't able to fix myself. Or
so
I'm still
find
in the
partners.
process. Finding partners, being surrounded by people. Yes.
Nannies, people. I mean, anyone in your child's life. Find an auntie, find a step parent, find a godparent, find anyone that if you're like, okay, this is something that I know I need to heal or work on, that I don't want to pass on to my kid, but I'm still a scream mom. Like I still scream when I'm upset. Like that's just my thing. It's my default. Like if you know that about yourself and you're still working through it, which, you know, you and the rest of the world, we all have our little things that we're still trying to sort through, then find an incredible repair person to be consistent in that child's life. Find someone who models calm anger, frustration, right? Just kind of cherry pick and build community in like videos, movies. I don't care. These things can be free. Like find someone on a TV show that models the thing that you're lacking and talk about it with your kid. Have you noticed that mommy always yells when she's upset? I don't love that I do that either. I'm working on it, right? I'm really working on it. But I love in XYZ TV show, I love in Bluey, that when the mommy's feeling upset, she says this phrase. I'm working on saying that too. Do you want to practice together? Or I hope you're learning from Bluey's mommy, like we're getting there together, right? These types of conversations.
I love that you brought up Bluey.
Find anyone. I don't care if it's a cartoon character. Anyone in your child's life, because you cannot do it all.
No,
and it's exhausting to build a village. So start tiny. Find a book that inspires your child. Read to them something. Show them a show that fills the gap of wherever you're concerned that your idiosyncrasies are harming your child. They're gonna. They're gonna, you know, and your parents' idiosyncrasies harmed you, and everyone's just doing the best they can. So I think the more awareness there is, it makes room for, you have kind of two options when you're being called out. And for attachment, for me, it's like I can either pivot towards shame or I can pivot towards curiosity. And so when I'm feeling like, oh, I feel threatened by that. Like now that I know I have XYZ attachment, or now that I know that I've exhibited XYZ attachment that I don't love towards my child or the kids in my life, I can either be embarrassed and like beat myself up and feel a lot of shame about that, or I can say, okay, like that's just the fact. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is.
It can be really hard when you're noticing the worst of yourself that you really do want to just say, I'm horrible.
Oh, I want to like go in a hole. I always want to like bury myself.
And I think the people who are able to recognize that and just be like, okay, I see that. I don't want that. Let's do the things that we need to change that. It takes a lot of work, but I also feel like it's probably the work that we need to do, because it's like what I tell my own kiddos, like it's totally fine to like see something that you don't like or cry, be sad, but afterwards you have to do the work so that way you're able to be happy with yourself, change things, make changes, that you don't want to just like,
it's answering now what? Like, so you had a big feeling, you processed your feeling, now what? And then I feel like you kind of guide them through that. So what do we do now?
Aren't people who are able to recognize things about themselves and then see it and then learn from it and then grow, those are usually the people who are able to be very successful in life, right?
More emotionally intelligent, and it's like a really messy spot right there. I don't want to breeze over. I can only speak from experience, but when I'm at this point of like, I've now acknowledged something and it's caused me pain, like that little spot is sometimes an hour and that little spot is sometimes like a month, right? So there's enough sitting in that moment of like, ooh, I'm not quite ready to move towards positive affirmation. I'm not quite ready to move towards healing. I'm actually deeply hurt and disappointed. I'm angry. I have big feelings about what led me to this point. And the more I know about myself, it's not always this immediate self-loathing or healing route. That like crux point can take a minute. And I think what you were saying about being gentle with yourself along that journey, especially in regards to attachment, because it is such a biological, psychological, neurological experience, it's how you're wired. And so rewiring is totally possible, but it's work. And so it's okay if you feel you're big crying at the end of a therapy appointment. I'm just so discouraged of how much work it's going to be to fix this or to heal myself, especially, and grieving a life that you wished you had had, or the more, maybe you had no memory that you experienced abuse as a child and it caused insecure attachment that you couldn't remember. You have an experience that helps you recall and remember. And then sitting in that moment of the grief, the shame, the disappointment, the anger, the rage, whatever it is fine. And finding support people that can be there for you in that moment of, I'm not quite ready to move in either direction, is amazing and really, really healthy. And it could be a therapist, and it could be a best friend, it could be a partner, it could be a parent, whomever it is for you, that can help you hold space for yourself, but then not just like never move forward, never do anything with that information. Yeah. Like, where are we going from here? The question that you work with your kids on. Whoa, big feeling. I'll be here with you all through it, however you need. But like, okay, we got our tears out. We had a minute to like sit with it. It took you maybe an hour or it took you a week, but we're circling back around to like, where do we go from here?